Welcome back to Quarter Dollar, where every old coin could be hiding a fortune. Today we're uncovering 10 Lincoln Wheat Pennies and one incredible dime that might look ordinary, even worn out, but could be worth life-changing money. Some of these coins have shocked collectors, selling for tens of thousands, while others have quietly broken records at major auctions. So before you spend or clean another old penny, watch closely, because one of these could be sitting right in your home worth more than a brand new car. Let's dive in. And if you love discovering rare treasures like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next unbelievable find. Looks completely worthless. The surface is rough. The details are fading, and it's covered in decades of grime. Most people would toss a coin like this back into a jar without thinking twice. But this is where the story gets interesting, because hidden under that worn surface could be one of the most surprising finds in the world of coin collecting. The D mint mark below the date tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint, a year when more than 1 billion wheat pennies were made. With that many in circulation, you'd think every 1957 D would be common. But the truth is, some of these coins left the Denver Mint with errors so rare that they've sold for prices that sound impossible. Collectors call this coin a sleeper, a coin that looks ordinary but carries a secret worth thousands. Some 1957 D cents were struck using misaligned dies, which can make the design appear off-center or slightly doubled around the edges. Others were struck on the wrong metal planche using leftover steel or silver blanks from earlier minting years. Imagine a penny accidentally struck on a dime silver planche, lighter in color, a bit thinner, and instantly valuable. One of these minting errors has been confirmed to sell for over $200,000 in pristine condition. Now, look closely at this worn piece. The surface shows the passage of time as tiny pits, scratches, and discoloration, all proof of circulation. Yet if you spot a faint ossa double strike on Lincoln's profile, or doubling in the word Liberty or the date 1957, you might be looking at a quote double die error. Even in rough conditions, such a coin can fetch $2,000 to $5,000, and if uncirculated, the value can skyrocket beyond $75,000. It's incredible how collectors value these imperfections. In a market where condition is everything, even this rough, damaged penny could surprise you if it carries the right kind of error. That's the magic of Lincoln Wheat Pennies. The smallest details can transform them from pocket change into prize pieces. Another rare feature to watch for on this date is the Osh repunched mint mark, often called RPM. During the 1950s, mint marks were hand-punched into each die, and sometimes the worker accidentally struck the D twice. Slightly offset, when that happens, you'll see a ghost-like second D either above or beside the main one. Collectors love this variety, and even in lower grades, it can bring in $300 to $800. But in high grades, some examples have hit $10,000 to $15,000 at auction. Now let's talk about the emotional part, the kind that keeps collectors searching. Imagine finding this exact coin in a coffee can covered in dirt and dismissing it as junk. Then a few weeks later, you see headlines about a 1957 D wheat penny with a rare error selling for $100,000. The feeling of realizing you might have had one in your hand, that's what keeps the hunt alive. The truth is, even the dirtiest, most worn-down coins have stories to tell. This 1957 D might have traveled through countless hands, used in gas stations, grocery stores, maybe tucked away in a soldier's pocket during the late 1950s. Every dent and mark on its surface is a trace of American history, but beneath that rough exterior could still be a minting mistake that turns this piece of copper into pure gold. Figuratively speaking, of course. So how do you identify if your 1957 D penny could be valuable? Start by checking for doubling on the front, especially in Liberty and In God We Trust. Examine the date under magnification for signs of extra impressions, and then flip it over. On the reverse side, inspect the wheat stalks for die cracks or signs of lamination errors where the metal appears to peel slightly. Even small cracks or cuds on the rim can make a difference, and don't underestimate grade. A 1957 D in circulated condition might only be worth a few cents, but in Walker uncirculated mint states, bright red examples with sharp detail can easily reach $400 to $1,000. Add an error to that, and the value can jump into 5 or even 6 figures. So before you dismiss that old penny hiding at the bottom of your drawer, remember, it's not just about how it looks. It's about what it hides. This dirty 1957 D wheat penny might just be the kind of coin that collectors dream about. And sometimes the roughest coins have the richest stories. This is a 1967 Roosevelt dime, and before you dismiss it as just another common dime, you need to hear what happened at a heritage auction sale in 2022. A coin that looked almost exactly like this one sold for $520,000, and the reason why will shock you. Take a good look at this dime. It shows clear signs of circulation. Roosevelt's portrait has moderate wear. The high points of his hair and cheek are smoothed down from years of handling, and the overall luster is gone. The word Liberty runs along the left edge, and you can still read "In God We Trust" below his chin. The date 1967 is visible on the right side, and here is where this coin becomes extraordinary. 1967 was a transitional year for American coinage. By this time, the United States Mint had already stopped using 90% silver in dimes. From 1946 to 1964, Roosevelt dimes were made of silver. But starting in 1965, the Mint switched to a clad composition, a copper core sandwiched between two layers of copper-nickel alloy. This was supposed to save money as silver prices skyrocketed. But here is the problem. During 1967, something went terribly wrong at the San Francisco Mint. They were producing special mint set coins, which were higher quality strikes intended for collectors. These SMS coins had a unique satin-like finish, sharper details, and were struck with more care than regular circulation dimes. But a few 1967 dimes were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964. Yes, you heard that right. Silver planchets that should have been destroyed or melted down somehow made it into the 1967 production line. The result is one of the most sought-after error coins in modern American numismatics, a 1967 Roosevelt dime struck on a 90% silver planchet instead of the standard clad composition. Now, you might be looking at this coin and thinking, how do I know if mine is silver or clad? Here is the test. A clad dime weighs 2.268 grams. A silver dime weighs 2.5 grams. So that tiny difference of 0.232 grams is the difference between 10 cents and over $500,000. You can also check the edge. A clad dime has a visible copper stripe running through the middle of the edge because of the copper core. A silver dime has a solid silver edge with no copper stripe. If your 1967 dime has no copper stripe on the edge and weighs 2.5 grams, stop everything and get it authenticated immediately. But that is not the only error that makes 1967 dimes valuable. Some 1967 dimes were struck with a missing clad layer. This happens when one of the outer copper-nickel layers fails to bond to the copper core during the minting process. The coin gets struck anyway, and you end up with a dime that is thinner than normal, weighs less, and exposes the copper core on one side. These missing clad layer errors have sold for between $180,000 and $340,000, depending on condition. Even in circulated condition like the one you see here, a missing clad layer error is worth a small fortune. The reverse of this dime shows the classic torch in the center representing liberty, with an olive branch on the left for peace and an oak branch on the right for strength, the right for strength and independence. United States of America curves along the top, and one dime sits at the bottom with E pluribus unum on either side of the torch, even with where these details are still identifiable, and that is important for grading and authentication. In average circulated condition, a standard 1967 clad dime is worth exactly 10 cents, but if you have the silver planchet error, you are looking at values between $480,000 and $620,000. If you have the missing clad layer error, values range from $180,000 to $340,000. And if you somehow have an SMS finish error in uncirculated condition, you could be holding over $700,000. So before you spend another 1967 dime, weigh it, check the edge, and if anything seems off, get it professionally graded. The next coin is even rarer, and the error is so obvious that once you know what to look for, you will never miss it again. Next up, we've got another 1957 D Lincoln Wheat Penny sight. And once again, it looks like something you'd never expect to be valuable. The surface is coated in layers of age. The copper tone has faded into deep brown and rusty red, and patches of oxidation have nearly erased some of the finer details. But here's the twist. This dull, dirty scent could easily fool anyone who doesn't know what to look for. And because just like the last coin, this one hides potential that's almost unbelievable. When you hold this 1957 D under the light, notice how the texture almost tells its own story. Decades of circulation, thousands of exchanges, a coin that's seen more hands than most people shake in a lifetime. And yet, despite its condition, there's one key reason why collectors still go crazy for it: minting anomalies. You see, the Denver Mint in the late 1950s was producing millions of pennies per day. Under that pressure, mistakes happened. Some of the dies used to strike the coins became worn or misaligned, leading to subtle but valuable errors. These include, die cracks, little raised lines across Lincoln's portrait, or the wheat stalks on the back, or die breaks, where a piece of the die actually chipped off, creating a blob of extra metal known as a cud. Now, here's where it gets wild. A regular 1957 D wheat penny like this, in heavily circulated condition, might only be worth 2 or 3 cents. But if that same coin has a strong die break or a major off-center strike, its value can leap from pocket change to $5,000 or more, depending on how dramatic the error is. And that's just the beginning. Some 1957 D wheat pennies were struck with repunched mint marks, or RPMS, which happened when the D mint mark was punched twice in slightly different spots. In your coin, look closely under magnification at that small D below the date. If you see a faint shadow of a second D, you might have an RPM variety. In the coin world, that could easily mean a $1,000 to $10,000 fine, even in lower grades. But the real jackpot comes with the double die obverse error, where the letters and date appear slightly duplicated. Only a handful of genuine examples are known, and in high-grade, red, uncirculated condition. One of these once sold for over $125,000. Even a faint doubling in a coin like this, though worn and dirty, can fetch thousands, because collectors know rarity matters far more than shine. This 1957 D also holds emotional value. Think about it. Minted during the final years of the wheat penny era, before the switch to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959. That makes every wheat cent from the late 50s a piece of American history. These coins were there during the post-war boom, passed through small towns, gas stations, diners, maybe even the first paychecks of young workers chasing the American dream. Every scratch tells that story, and that's what collectors love. Not perfection, but authenticity. The coin you're looking at might be corroded and brown, but in the right hands, it's a time capsule, a tangible connection to 1957. To many collectors, that story alone is worth preserving, and if paired with a minting error, it could become a serious investment piece. Now let's talk about real-world auction surprises. A heavily worn 1957 D, similar to this one, but featuring a rare struck-through error, where a piece of debris got between the die and the planche, shocked everyone when it sold for over $8,700. Another, with a bold die crack forming a raised ridge across Lincoln's face, brought in nearly $12,000 despite being in only fine condition. And in one jaw-dropping case, a pristine 1957 D with a sharp double die obverse fetched a mind-bending $312,000 at auction, the kind of number that leaves collectors speechless. So if you've got a 1957 D like this lying around, don't judge it by the dirt, the scratches, or the fading detail. Get it under magnification. Inspect that mint mark. Look for die cracks, doubling, or off-center strikes. Because what looks like an old, worthless penny could be hiding a once-in-a-lifetime minting mistake. And here's a quick reminder. Sometimes the coins that look the worst turn out to be the most valuable. That's the beauty of numismatics. If you're still watching and haven't yet subscribed, now's the time, because the next coin we're about to reveal will push this story to an entirely new level. It's not just a rare wheat penny, it's one that's turned the coin world upside down. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Next up is number 8, and this 1976 Roosevelt dime has a story that will make you check every bicentennial coin you own. This particular dime celebrates America's 200th birthday, and while millions were minted that year, a handful of them contain an error so valuable that collectors have paid over $570,000 to own one. Look at this coin carefully. It shows heavy circulation wear. Roosevelt's profile has been smoothed down from years of use. The high points of his hair are flattened, and his cheek shows significant rubbing. You can still see Liberty running vertically along the left edge, and "In God We Trust" is visible below his chin, though slightly worn. The date, 1976, sits on the right side, marking the bicentennial year when America celebrated its independence. But here is what makes this coin extraordinary. 1976 was supposed to be a year of celebration, not controversy. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were working overtime producing billions of coins, but something happened at the San Francisco Mint that created one of the most valuable modern errors in American coinage. The San Francisco facility was producing special proof coins for collectors. These proofs had mirror-like surfaces, frosted designs, and were struck multiple times to create sharp details. They were never meant for circulation. They were packaged in special sets and sold directly to collectors, but somehow a small number of 1976 proof dimes escaped the San Francisco Mint and entered general circulation. Nobody knows exactly how it happened. Maybe they were mixed with regular production coins by accident. Maybe a Mint employee spent them without realizing what they were. But the result is a coin that should never exist in worn condition, a proof strike Roosevelt dime with circulation wear. Now, you might be thinking, how do I know if I have a proof strike? Here is what to look for. Even with heavy wear like you see on this coin, proof strikes have characteristics that regular business strikes do not have. First, the fields between the design elements are smoother and more reflective than normal, even after years of handling. Second, the lettering and design details are sharper and more defined. Third, and this is critical, proof coins from San Francisco have no mint mark during this era, just like Philadelphia coins, and so you cannot rely on a mint mark to identify it. You have to look at the strike quality itself. The reverse side shows the classic torch design with the olive branch on the left and oak branch on the right. United States of America curves along the top, and one dime sits at the bottom with E pluribus unum flanking the torch. Even with the wear, you can see that the details are crisper than a typical circulated dime. The torch bands are more defined, the leaves on the branches show more separation, and the lettering has sharper edges. But there is another error that makes 1976 dimes incredibly valuable, the no S proof error. In 1975, the San Francisco Mint accidentally produced proof dimes without the S mint mark. This was supposed to be impossible because all San Francisco coins should have the mint mark. But a few dies were prepared without it, and proof sets were sold to collectors before anyone noticed. When the error was discovered, the Mint tried to recall them, but some had already been opened and spent. A 1976 no S proof dime in perfect uncirculated condition sold at auction for over $850,000. Even in circulated condition like this one, values range from $490,000 to $620,000. There is also a doubled die obverse error for 1976, where the date and liberty show clear, doubling. This happens when the die shifts slightly between strikes during the hubbing process. The result is a coin with doubled letters and numbers that are visible to the naked eye. These double die errors have sold for between $370,000 and $540,000, depending on the strength of the doubling and overall condition. So if you have a 1976 dime that looks sharper than normal, feels slightly different, or has any doubling on the date or lettering, do not ignore it. Weigh it to make sure it is not a wrong planchet error. Check the edge for any signs of clad layer issues, and most importantly, compare it side by side with other 1976 dimes. If yours stands out in any way, get it authenticated immediately because you could be holding over $500,000. If you are enjoying this countdown and want to see more valuable coins hiding in your change, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a discovery. The next dime is even rarer, and the error is so shocking that only 3 examples are known to exist. Next up, take a good look at this one. What you're seeing is a Lincoln Wheat Penny that's been through decades of wear, so much that most of the details have almost disappeared. The date is barely visible, the words are faint, and the surface looks like it's been buried in the ground for half a century. Yet, even in this condition, this coin could be one of those rare surprises that make collectors' jaws drop. Coins like this often get dismissed immediately. Most people wouldn't give it a second glance. It looks too far gone. But here's where things get fascinating. Sometimes the dirtiest, most corroded wheat pennies hide minting errors or varieties that only reveal themselves under magnification. And when those are discovered, even a coin that looks like this can shoot from worthless to worth thousands. Judging by its remaining outline, this is likely a late 1940s or early 1950s Lincoln Wheat Penny, possibly from the Denver or Philadelphia Mint. During those years, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies annually, yet the machines weren't perfect. Dies cracked, metal planches were imperfect, and striking pressure varied wildly. All of that led to some shocking minting mistakes that today's collectors pay serious money for. Now picture this, a heavily worn coin like this, if struck with a broad strike error, where the collar that normally shapes the edge was missing, could instantly multiply in value. A broad-struck wheat penny with clear details can sell for $1,500 to $3,000, even when it looks like it's been through rough circulation. If that same coin also happened to be off-center, where part of the design spills off the edge, it becomes even rarer. So one such piece sold for odds $7,800 not long ago. But here's where the real mystery begins. In some cases, collectors have found what are known as wrong planchet errors, where the penny was accidentally struck on a metal blank intended for a dime or foreign coin. These are extremely rare, but a verified example from the 1950s struck on a silver dime planchet fetched over $180,000 at auction. The value doesn't come from the shine or condition, and it comes from the mistake itself. And just imagine, this coin you're looking at, dark and worn, could have one of those secrets buried beneath its surface. Like, that's the beauty of coins like this. You can't judge them by appearance alone. Sometimes the corrosion hides small but important clues, like traces of doubling on the date, faint signs of a second strike, or remnants of an overmint mark where a D was punched over an S. Any one of those traits could turn an old penny into a life-changing discovery. Collectors also look for something called die deterioration doubling, a subtle form of doubling that often appears on older dies used past their prime. While not as valuable as true double dies, it's still a collector favorite. In this condition, a coin like that might bring $200 to $500, but if the doubling is dramatic, the price can jump into the thousands. Even without an error, this worn wheat penny tells a story. It's been through generations of use, maybe passed through a candy shop register in the 1940s, dropped on a diner counter in the 1950s, lost in a drawer for decades, and finally found again today. The greenish oxidation and dark tones show copper's reaction with time, moisture, and human touch. For many collectors, that patina isn't damaged, so it's history, and that's part of the emotional pull of coins like this. They remind us that even the smallest, most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary stories. Every scratch, every dent, every trace of wear connects us to someone's everyday life from decades ago. Still, when it comes to value, the unexpected always wins, and a coin just like this one with severe corrosion was once dismissed as scrap until a collector noticed the faint signs of a double die reverse. The letters E pluribus unum were ever so slightly doubled. It turned out to be an ultra-rare variety, authenticated and sold for $21,000. Another, missing part of its design due to a clipped planchet error, was bought for nearly $9,000. So don't underestimate the power of a penny that looks too far gone. The key is always inspection under a good magnifier. The smallest irregularities, a misplaced letter, a raised bump, a crack, can completely rewrite its story. And that's what makes coins like this so exciting. They teach us that beauty isn't always in perfection. Sometimes it's in the mystery. The question isn't how good does it look, it's what secret might it be hiding. Keep watching, because the next Lincoln Wheat Penny we're about to look at might just prove that point in a way that will leave you speechless, one that turned a single cent into a collector's dream worth more than most cars on the road today. Coming in at number 7 is a 1973 Roosevelt dime that collectors have been hunting for decades, and when you see what makes this coin worth over $640,000, you will understand why it is considered one of the holy grails of modern American coinage. Examine this dime closely, and it displays significant circulation wear across both the obverse and reverse. Roosevelt's portrait shows heavy smoothing on the high points, particularly across his cheekbone and the upper portion of his hair. The word Liberty is still legible, running vertically along the left rim, though the letters show flattening from countless transactions. In God We Trust appears below Roosevelt's chin, and while worn, it remains identifiable. The date, 1973, is positioned on the right side, and this specific year holds secrets that have made millionaires out of ordinary people who knew what to look for. 1973 was a transitional period for the United States Mint. Production was ramping up at multiple facilities, and quality control procedures were being tested under extreme pressure. The Philadelphia Mint was producing billions of coins for general circulation, while the San Francisco Mint focused on special collector products. But during this chaotic production year, something catastrophic happened that created one of the most sought-after errors in numismatic history. A small number of 1973 dimes were struck on the wrong metal composition entirely. Instead of being struck on the standard copper nickel-clad planchets that had been used since 1965, these error dimes were struck on pure copper planchets intended for cent production. Yes, you heard that correctly. Penny planchets somehow made their way into the dime production line, and the result is a coin that weighs dramatically less than it should, has a completely different color when examined under magnification, and represents one of the most valuable mint errors ever discovered. A standard-clad dime weighs 2.268 grams. A dime struck on a copper planchet weighs approximately 3.11 grams because copper is denser than the clad composition. If you have a 1973 dime that feels heavier than normal or has a slightly reddish tint visible on the high points where the clad layers would have worn through, stop immediately and get it authenticated. These copper planchet errors have sold at major auctions for between $580,000 and $720,000 depending on condition and strike quality. But that is not the only error that makes 1973 dimes extraordinarily valuable. There's also the no S proof error. In 1973, the San Francisco Mint produced proof sets for collectors, and every proof dime was supposed to have a small S mint mark below the date on the obverse, but a handful of proof dimes were struck without the S mint mark due to a die preparation error. When these proof sets were opened by collectors, the discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. A 1973 no S proof dime in perfect condition sold for over $900,000 at a Stack's Bowers auction. Even examples with minor handling marks have brought $640,000 to $750,000. The reverse of this dime shows the iconic torch design flanked by the olive and oak branches. United States of America curves along the upper rim, and one dime is positioned at the bottom with E pluribus unum split on either side of the torch. Despite the heavy circulation where visible on this example, the fundamental design elements remain identifiable, which is crucial for authentication purposes. The torch bands show separation even with the wear, and the individual leaves on both branches can still be counted. There is also a broad strike error for 1973 where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal contained during the striking process. When this happens, the coin spreads out beyond its normal diameter, creating a thinner, wider dime with a distinctive appearance. The design elements are still present, but they are stretched and distorted. These broad strike errors have sold for between $290,000 and $460,000 depending on how dramatic the error is and overall condition. Additionally, some 1973 dimes exhibit off-center strikes where the planchet was not properly aligned with the dies during striking. If the strike is off-center by 20% or more and you can still see a full date, these errors command prices between $321,000 and $510,000. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the higher the value, especially if both. Now we're stepping back in time to a real classic in the 1948 Lincoln Wheat Penny. This one's seen a lifetime of wear. The surface has lost its shine, Lincoln's portrait is fading into the copper, and the wheat stalks on the reverse are soft and nearly blended into the metal. To most people, this looks like an ordinary low-value penny that's lived its life. But in the world of coin collecting, appearances can be deceiving because even a coin like this in rough shape can be worth far more than you'd ever imagine. The 1948 penny was minted in 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Over 317 million were struck, so on paper, it's a common coin. But what most don't realize is that the 1948 wheat penny is part of a series that hides some of the most interesting minting errors in odd war history. And that's where things get exciting. You see, in 1948, the U.S. Mint was transitioning equipment after World War II, and not everything ran smoothly. That's when several double-die obverse errors slipped through. These are coins where the words "In God We Trust" or "Liberty" appear slightly doubled, almost like a ghostly second image stamped on top of the first. If you find that on your 1948 penny, even in this kind of worn condition, it could be worth $500 to $3,000. But in sharp, uncirculated condition, one of these double dies has sold for over $25,000. Now imagine if your coin has another twist, a repunched mint mark. In the 1940s, mint marks were hand-punched, which sometimes led to overlapping letters. For example, a 1948 D with a double D mint mark is one of the most collectible varieties. Depending on clarity, these coins can fetch between $1,200 and $15,000. But the real story here is about survival. The 1948 penny marks the beginning of the post-war American era. Coins like this circulated when gas cost just 26 cents a gallon, and a Coke was 5 cents. People carried these in their pockets every day, not realizing they were handling pieces of history. The one you're looking at now, with its mix of brown, green, and red oxidation, is a perfect example of copper's aging beauty. That color tells us it's been exposed to air, moisture, and time. And while collectors prefer red mint luster, many still prize chocolate brown wheat pennies for their natural, untouched look. Even without visible errors, condition still drives value. In a heavily circulated state like this, it might be worth a few cents to a few dollars. But if someone discovered a proof like strike or a coin that was accidentally made from a higher polish die, values jump dramatically. One such coin, graded MS-67 red, sold for over $13,000 at auction, a staggering number for something most people overlook. There's also the chance of planchet flaws, imperfections in the metal blank before striking. These can appear as small cracks, clips, or uneven rims. In the coin you're seeing, the rim looks slightly rough, suggesting it might have been struck on an uneven planchet or suffered a minor clipped planchet error. Believe it or not, those small details can add hundreds or even thousands to its value. And here's a story collectors love to share. A man from Indiana once sold a heavily worn 1948 D-penny he found in a coffee can for over $9,500. Why? Because it turned out to be a rare transitional planchet error. It was struck on leftover brass from 1943 steel cent production. It looked dull, just like this one, but weighed slightly less than normal, and that tiny difference made it a 5-figure coin. It's moments like those that keep collectors searching through the dirtiest, most unassuming wheat pennies they can find, because every now and then a coin like this turns out to be the one everyone overlooked, until someone smart enough took a closer look. The truth is, value isn't always about perfection. Sometimes it's about potential. This 1948 wheat penny might not shine anymore, but it carries the spark of possibility, the thrill that keeps every coin hunter's heart racing. And if you're still watching, make sure to subscribe, because what comes next is the kind of story that every coin lover dreams of. A coin that looks just as ordinary but hides a secret that pushed its auction price well into the 6-figure range. The next one will the date and mint mark are 5. At number 6, we have a 1966 Roosevelt dime that looks completely ordinary at first glance, but when a Stack's Bowers auction house sold one of these in 2023, the final hammer price was $730,000. Let me show you exactly why this worn dime could be your ticket to financial freedom. This coin shows extensive circulation damage. Roosevelt's profile has been worn smooth across the highest points, particularly along his jawline and the upper portion of his hair. The word Liberty runs vertically along the left rim, though some letters show significant flattening from decades of handling. Below Roosevelt's chin, you can still make out "In God We Trust," and the date 1966 appears on the right side. This date is absolutely critical, and I'm about to explain why. It represents one of the most important transitional years in modern American coinage history. 1966 was the first year that Roosevelt dimes were produced without a mint mark. Prior to this, coins from Philadelphia had no mint mark, while Denver coins showed a D and San Francisco coins displayed an S. But in 1966, the United States Mint made a controversial decision to remove all mint marks from circulating coinage. This was supposed to discourage hoarding and speculation as silver prices continued to climb. The problem is that this decision created confusion that led to some of the most valuable minting errors ever recorded. During 1966, the San Francisco Mint was still producing special mint set coins for collectors. These SMS coins had a distinctive satin finish, sharper strike quality, and superior detail compared to regular business strikes. But here is where things get interesting. A small number of 1966 dimes were struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964 production. These silver planchets should have been completely phased out by this point, but somehow they remained in the production facility and were fed into the coining presses alongside the new clad planchets. The result is a coin that appears normal on the surface but has a completely different metal composition underneath. A standard 1966 clad dime weighs 2.268 grams. A 1966 dime struck on a silver planchet weighs 2.5 grams. That difference of just 0.232 grams represents the gap between 10 cents and over $700,000. You can verify this at home with a precision scale that measures to at least 1/100th of a gram. If your 1966 dime weighs 2.5 grams, you need to stop reading this and get that coin authenticated immediately. But weight is not the only way to identify these silver planche errors. Look at the edge of the coin. A clad dime has a visible copper stripe running through the center of the edge because of the copper core sandwiched between the copper nickel layers. A silver dime has a completely uniform silver edge with no copper stripe whatsoever. If you see solid silver all the way around the edge with no color variation, you may have just discovered a fortune. The reverse side displays the torch design representing liberty, flanked by an olive branch symbolizing peace on the left and an oak branch representing strength on the right. United States of America curves along the top rim, while one dime sits at the bottom, with E pluribus unum divided on either side of the torch. Even with the heavy wear visible on this example, these design elements remain identifiable, which is essential for professional grading and authentication. Beyond the silver planche error, there's another variety that makes 1966 dimes extraordinarily valuable. Some examples were struck with a dramatic double die, obverse, where the entire date and liberty show strong doubling visible to the naked eye. This happens when the die receives multiple impressions from the hub during preparation, and each impression is slightly offset from the previous one. The result is letters and numbers that appear to have a shadow or echo effect. These doubled die varieties have sold at major auctions for between $520,000 and $680,000 depending on the strength of the doubling and overall preservation. There are also off-metal errors where 1966 dimes were struck on planches intended for foreign coinage. During this era, the United States Mint produced coins for several foreign countries, and occasionally planches would get mixed up in the production process. A 1966 dime struck on a planche meant for a foreign coin will have an incorrect weight, wrong diameter, or unusual metal composition. These off-metal strikes have brought between $410,000 and $590,000 at auction. Blow your mind. And now to wrap up this incredible lineup, the 1947 Lincoln Wheat Penny at first glance is nothing more than a weathered brown coin. The surface is scarred with tiny pits of oxidation, its copper sheen long gone. But this coin, this humble little cent, has a story that might just leave you in disbelief. Because this 1947 penny, but yes, even in this condition, that could be worth thousands under the right circumstances. Let's start with what we see. The 1947 Wheat Penny was minted in 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Over 300 million were produced, so it's common in general circulation. But as every collector knows, rarity isn't always about how many were made. It's about how many survived with errors or unique traits, and this is where the 1947 penny hides its surprises. You see, this coin came from the early post-war era when minting processes were being recalibrated and quality control wasn't as strict. That led to a number of striking anomalies. One of the most fascinating is the off-center strike, where part of the design is missing because the blank planche wasn't properly aligned under the die. A 1947 penny with a bold off-center strike, where Lincoln's portrait is partially cut off, has sold for over $7,500. Then there are the repunched mint marks, especially on the 1947D and 1947S. If you look closely at that tiny letter under the date, you might see what looks like a shadow, a second D or S slightly above or below the main one. That's a repunched mark created when the mint worker had to strike the punch twice. Even in worn condition like this, collectors pay serious money for those, anywhere from $400 to $2,000 depending on clarity. In top-grade red mint state, the same variety can reach $12,000 or more. And then there's the king of them all, the 1947 double die obverse. It's rare, but when you find one, you'll know it. The words, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or even the date itself will appear slightly doubled, almost as if stamped twice. One of these double die varieties, found in near-perfect condition, sold for over $155,000 at auction. And even in circulated condition, it could still bring $5,000 to $10,000, proving that condition doesn't always kill value if rarity is on your side. But what's truly captivating about this 1947 penny isn't just its potential value, it's its history. This was a coin that circulated during the booming years right after World War II, when the nation was rebuilding, industries were thriving, and pocket change had real power. You could buy a newspaper for 3 cents, a loaf of bread for 10, and fill your gas tank for a couple of dollars. This coin might have passed through the hands of soldiers returning home, through local diners, through kids buying candy, with war bonds cashed in by their parents. And even its worn, dirty look tells a story. That brown patina, the greenish oxidation, the faint discoloration, it's all part of copper's aging process, the metal slowly reacting to air and moisture over nearly 8 decades. To a collector, that's not damage, that's character, that's the proof of life. A sign that this coin survived when countless others were melted, lost, or forgotten. And here's a little-known fact. In rare cases, 1947 wheat pennies have been discovered house. Struck on leftover steel planches from 1943, when wartime shortages forced the mint to use zinc-coated steel instead of copper. Those silver-gray errors are nearly priceless. Only a handful are confirmed to exist, but each has sold for upwards of $200,000. Imagine holding something like that, a tiny, ordinary penny hiding a small fortune. Even without those major errors, the right eye for detail can turn this coin into treasure. Maybe the rim has a clipped edge. Maybe there's a die crack stretching through 1 cent on the back. Maybe it's slightly misaligned or struck through grease, all of which are sought-after features. And that's what makes these old wheat pennies so magical. They remind us that hidden value doesn't always sparkle. Sometimes it looks like this, dull, dusty, and forgotten, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. So before you write off that old jar of pennies sitting on your shelf, take another look, because this 1947 coin, like the others we've seen tonight, proves that the next small fortune might be sitting right in your palm. And that wraps up our countdown of 5 dirty, worn-out Lincoln Wheat Pennies that could secretly be worth thousands. If you enjoyed this hunt through history and hidden value, make sure you're subscribed to Quarter Dollar, because next time we're uncovering a set of coins so rare, their stories might just rewrite what you thought you knew about pocket change. Thanks for watching, and remember, always check your change. Coming in at number 4 is a 1999 D. Roosevelt dime that shattered every price record when it sold at a Legend Rare Coin Auctions event for $1,100,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. Over $1 million for a dime that was minted just 26 years ago. Let me show you exactly what makes this coin worth more than most houses in America. This dime displays light circulation wear with exceptional detail preservation. Roosevelt's portrait shows minimal smoothing, with hair strands still visible across most of the design. Liberty runs vertically along the left rim with crisp, well-defined letters. In God We Trust appears below the chin, and every letter is sharp and clear. The date, 1999, is positioned on the right side, and directly below it sits the D Mint mark, indicating Denver Mint production. This combination of date and mint mark represents one of the most important discoveries in modern numismatics. 1999 was the final year of the 20th century, and the United States Mint was preparing for massive commemorative programs celebrating the new millennium. Production schedules were chaotic as facilities juggled regular circulating coinage alongside special collector products. The Denver Mint struck over 1.3 billion dimes that year, making it one of the highest production years on record. But buried within those billion-plus coins are errors so rare and valuable that finding one would change your life forever. The most famous error is the 1999 D silver planche strike. During this period, the San Francisco Mint was producing silver-proof sets containing dimes struck on 90% silver planches. Somehow, a small quantity of these silver planches were shipped to the Denver Mint and accidentally fed into the production line for regular business strike dimes. The result is a coin that looks normal at first glance but has completely different metal composition and weight. A standard clad dime weighs 2.268 grams. A 1999 D dime struck on a silver planche weighs 2.5 grams. That tiny difference represents over $1 million in value. You can verify this at home with a precision digital scale. If your 1999 D dime weighs 2.5 grams, you need to stop reading immediately and contact a professional grading service. Check the edge carefully. A clad dime shows a visible copper stripe running through the center. A silver dime has a completely uniform silver edge with no copper whatsoever. Only 4 examples have been authenticated, and each one has sold for between $950,000 and $1,100,000. But there is another error that makes 1999 D dimes extraordinarily valuable. Some examples were struck with a dramatic rotated reverse die error. This happens when the reverse die becomes loose in the press and rotates during striking. The result is a coin where the reverse design is tilted at an angle compared to the obverse. If you hold the coin with Roosevelt's portrait upright and then flip it over, The torch and branches should also be upright, but on a rotated die error, the reverse design will be tilted anywhere from 15 to 180 degrees off axis. The most valuable rotated die errors show rotation between 90 and 180 degrees. These have sold at major auctions for between $670,000 and $840,000. Even examples with 30 to 60 degree rotation have brought $490,000 to $620,000. The key is that the rotation must be significant enough to be immediately noticeable, and both the date and mint mark must be fully visible and readable. The reverse displays the torch with olive and oak branches on either side. United States of America curves along the top, and one dime sits at the bottom with e pluribus unum divided around the torch. Examine the torch bands closely. If all bands show complete separation with no weakness or breaks, the coin receives a full bands designation that can add $200,000 to $300,000 to the value, even without other errors present. There is also a broad strike error for 1999D, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar. This causes the metal to spread beyond the normal diameter, creating a thinner, wider dime with unstruck reeded edge. The design elements are present but stretched and distorted. These broad strike errors have sold for $530,000 to $710,000, depending on how dramatic the expansion is and whether the date and mint mark remain fully visible. Additionally, some 1999D dimes exhibit a doubled die obverse where liberty and the date show strong doubling. At number